just put it right on your.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, officially welcome to Big Sandy, and we appreciate you fellows coming over here from Florida and down here from New Jersey to see the digester, to actually watch the operation and see what we're trying to do with trash and sludge in this country. I was talking to Eric just here at lunch a little while ago and trying to figure out whether his first time in Big Sandy was in 1921 or not, because in his first visit to this country, he came to Dallas, Texas, on the train, which runs right through here, so it's possible his first visit was to Big Sandy. I'd like to introduce Eric now to speak. Eric has been a pioneer in composting. Eric is the oldest living pioneer in the composting industry, and before that, he was in fermentation and the yeast business. There's no one I know that knows more about how to treat our byproducts of life, as we call trash and sludge, or knows more about the problems that we have with our soils. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Eric Eweson.
Thank you. Well, I don't know quite how to start this. You all know I'm a manure man, but it might be of interest for you to know that I started on the more important business of manure by being a manufacturer of yeast for baking, for which a friend of mine invented a special method which involved using a very polluting waste material, which was the waste liquor from paper mills, which is very acid and very polluting and kills the fish in the rivers where they dump it. And after having built a factory in Europe for this particular process, both my friend and I are Swedish, and we were brought up there and studied together. So that factory was built, of course, in Europe, but in fact in Finland. But it was very successful from the beginning, and as a result, all the big companies in the countries in Europe where they were manufacturing paper quickly bought up the patent rights for it, so as not to have to compete with new yeast manufacturers. However, when this was all done and the patent rights in Europe had been sold, I said to my friend, well, now why don't we go to America or make still some more money? And he said, well, no, I have made all I want, and you go. So that's how I come over here. I had been here on a visit before, about 10 years earlier, but it took me quite a while, of course, to get this sort of thing going. And I may say it was, in a way, a more spectacular process than the particular fermentation process that I'm now involved in, because it entailed making a food product from a recognized, seriously polluting waste product. However, it worked very well. I was able to build 2 factories, but they were too successful for comfort. That means for the comfort of the competing yeast industry. So they quickly bought the patent rights and the factories, and I became pleasantly unemployed. And that is when I began to think about other waste materials that could be converted by microbes into something else, just exactly as the waste sulfite liquor could be used as food for microorganisms to make a valuable and useful product. Well, what you see here today is the result of these efforts, that one can turn anything of organic origin into something else by the use of life itself, such life being microorganisms of various kinds. Now, I didn't think that much would come out of this thing at that time when I had more or less perfected the process in theory and by experimentation on a small scale. And therefore I didn't do much about it. I did talk to a few people about it, including some municipal authorities, but I found very little interest for it. And that is why I laid it to rest and passed life as pleasantly as I could in other ways, until in recent years, some friends have come to me and criticized me for being unnecessarily unemployed. In the meantime, though, something had happened, but that is now 10 or 12 years ago, and that was that an educational authority had sent representatives to look at an experimental plant that I had. Those representatives were from Ambassador College in California, and that led to me giving some lectures there, and ultimately led to the building of this particular digester that you have seen today by another college of the same, or rather a branch college of the big college in Pasadena. And that was then run by the college for about 8 or 10 years, but only for their own purpose. None of the product was sold, or there was no attempt on selling any. As a matter of fact, my understanding was that they wanted to use it all. However, when they had used as much as they wanted and began to feel that they never had much more use, they didn't have as much use for it as before, some associates of mine, or some friends of mine rather, in the college and myself, we bought this particular operation from the college and began then to operate it ourselves with the purpose of making the product available for commerce and see what it would turn out to. Well, that's also what you see, the result of today, that the product can now be made and varied considerably, so that we are not really only limited here to making compost, but we can also make other products that are useful and valuable for the growing of anything, and sold mostly to nurseries and organizations of that kind. But the basic fact remains that it all is based on the conversion of organic waste materials into another product. That means recycling the byproducts of life, which I prefer to call them byproducts rather than waste products, because byproducts is really what they are, and recycle them to the land. In recent years, of course, something new has begun to happen, and that is that long-time misuse of these waste products or byproducts has caused pollution problems. And that now has sort of made another situation develop, that the process can be used to convert those waste materials into non-polluting, useful articles. And I assume that that is the principal reason why we have our guests today. It is not so much for the purpose that I thought would be the principal thing or the principal value of it, as it is for trying to solve a now probably seriously growing pollution problem. I don't know whether it is clear enough to you or not, but by such conversion, there is no pollution whatsoever. I would say that even those materials that are rejected by the natural process, such as the metals and the plastics, are rendered absolutely non-polluting. They will probably still have some difficulty of disposals, but a great many of those things that are now segregated and screened off, they probably in the very near future will be of considerable value. And they can be easily segregated, preferably before the process starts. We have made already considerable experiments along those lines, and we have a system for doing that, but we are not really stressing that now, because we think it's best to start in a simpler way of doing what we are here, that is utilizing the organic portion of those wastes and leaving the inorganic portions for landfill, where they, as I said before, have absolutely no, where they give absolutely no cause for pollution, because what pollutes are the organic materials. The steel and the plastics are not polluting. There are another, perhaps a few confusing things in this picture. One of them is, why hasn't it been more widely used? Well, I'm afraid that the responsibility for that is largely mine. I have not thought that there was much interest for it until some better informed people than myself began to talk about that. And then I have tried, of course, to learn a little about it, and I have found that they're right. There is today a problem that I am absolutely sure can be solved in this manner, not only in a completely non-polluting way, but also in a much more economical way than any of the methods that are used today, none of which can be said to be completely non-polluting. In fact, I don't believe that there is any way that organic matter can be disposed of. It can only be converted into something else. If you dispose of it by burning, for instance, it isn't really disposing, because what does not remain as ashes when you burn must go into the air. You can't get rid of anything in this world, but you can convert it. And as far as organic matter is concerned, I don't think there is any other way than to do it by the forces of life that have been doing it for millions and millions of years. And that particular process can now, as you have seen an example of today, be converted into something completely different in a very short period of time. And it's the same process that has been going on